Okay, the psalm is Psalm 98. Denise, you want to read?
The Lord comes to rule the earth with justice.
The Lord comes to rule the earth with justice.
Sing praise to the Lord with the harp and the melodious song, with triumphs and the sound of the horn. Sing joyfully before the King, the Lord. The Lord comes to
rule the earth with justice.
Let the sea and what fills it resound, the world and those who dwell in it. Let the rivers clap their hands, the mountains shout with them for joy.
The Lord comes to rule the earth with justice.
Before the Lord, for he comes to rule the earth. He will rule the world with justice and the peoples with iniquity.
The Lord comes to rule the earth with justice. So this psalm, we're kind of seeing the kingship of God and also his coming judgment. He's coming to rule the earth with justice. So when we start off here, we have sing praise to the Lord with the harp and melodious song, trumpet sound of the horn. So this would be temple worship. That's kind of implied here, like a liturgical celebration. And we don't use harps and trumpets that much anymore. Although Jim, we could probably get that going in the choir a lot. Yeah, trumpets and harps. You want to?
You can get that going, right?
That's Mike.
Okay, yeah, we better clear with Mike Carey upstairs in the. But there's this liturgical celebration that they would have, and actually, so music. Actually, what did David do? He used music as an exorcism device for King Saul, and so it's when we're praying. One of the saints said that when you sing, you're praying twice. I don't sing that well, so it's maybe 1.5, but or maybe it's a negative, maybe 0.5. I'm not sure, but I do the best I can. I do love to sing, but it's just maybe not always sounding the greatest because I haven't yet. That was one of the things we're gonna do is get a singing training. So I'm not sure what they call that, but
Music lesson.
Oh, music lessons. Okay.
Singing lesson.
Yeah, is that what it's called? Singing training.
Singing lesson.
Oh boy. I'll stick to Bible study, I guess. So when God comes, he's going to restore order. And it talks about two things. It talks about justice and equity that he's going to do. And so what is justice? God is going to right the wrongs on earth, right? That's his justice. And God's judgments are holy and true, right? So he's equally fair to everybody. And God knows our heart, right? So our particular judgment is not going to be the same as anyone else because we've all been given different graces and, different things, basically that we have. And so actually, and I'm going to share something that was kind of an eye-opener. A long time ago, there was a person that was convicted of murder, right? He committed murder. And I knew this person. He actually worked for me, but that's a whole nother story. After that, I prayed for good Catholic employees, and I got them, so I was happy about that. But about 20 years ago, but I wondered how, I was kind of looking at it, and I was praying, and I asked the Lord, I said, well, I'm glad I'm not like that person. No, I didn't say that. But it was kind of revealed to me that I grew up, right? My dad was a deacon. He was a Trappist monk. My mom was almost a Felician nun. She was in the final vows period. I grew up with 12 years of Catholic education. I had 3 uncles who were priests, a great uncle who was a Monsignor. I had all this around me and all this training and all this stuff. And I still fell away from the faith for a while. And, and I asked the Lord, and when I get judged, it's going to be based on the graces that I received and rejected. And so this person who, God just revealed to me that my fall from grace may have been greater than this person that did this murder. I mean, so you may not think that, but you're going to be judged in particular on what you've been given. And so that was perfectly clear to me at that point in time. And it was shocking. And I mean, because we may think, oh, I don't do this, or I don't, well, you were given so many graces and so many, so much that you had. And what did you do with what I gave you? And so that's why I'm very careful to, I pray for everybody, because I don't know their situation. I don't know what graces God gave them. And sometimes people, God knows, I've known a lot of people, like in the last minutes of their life, they've come, it's been this exceptional grace. And they've come to God and they got all the sacraments. I mean, I remember we prayed and prayed and prayed for this one person. And right at the last moment, he was able to get I called my dad and I said, Dad, this is what's going to happen. And my dad went down there and he got baptized. He got all the sacraments and, he got the apostolic blessing. He went to a heart surgery, died. Well, praise God. Everybody, people were saying, oh, he died. I'm like, well, that's good. It's like, I mean, it's not good that he died, but you know what? That's the way you want to go, right? And that's God's mercy and grace. And so we don't know, but we're going to be judged when he comes. I don't want to assume that, maybe I'm not doing the things that other people are doing, that I'm, I'm going to be judged in particular on my merits and my graces. God knows me perfect. And he knows what I got, and he knows when I say no to him, that's serious, right? When you say no to God, that's serious. When I offend him, I know it's offensive. I mean, if I didn't know everything, I'd probably I wouldn't be culpable. But because I have full knowledge, I am culpable. When I say no with full knowledge, that's a mortal sin, right? So it's grave matter, right? What are the elements of it? Is it grave matter? Is the sin serious, right? Do I have full knowledge of what I'm doing, right? And full consent to that? So we got to be careful, because we can look at others and say, oh, they're this or that or whatever. But that's why I always poke fun and say, oh, I'm glad I'm not like that person. We don't want to say that. That's what the Pharisee said, when he was praying to himself. We talked about this a few weeks ago. He was in the temple praying to himself. And he said, well, I'm glad I'm not like this tax collector. And so we got to be careful about that. So I just want to caution you on that, because God knows your heart and he knows your graces that you received. And so when sin is sin, we can point it out. If you see somebody doing evil, you point it out, right? That's actually spiritual counsel. That's that's a spiritual work of mercy, correcting the sinner, right? We want to do that, right? We want to say, hey, this can, you're basically running off a cliff. I want to help you. And that's what they're doing. If they're going to commit a mortal sin, they're running off a cliff. They're killing themselves. They're committing a mortal sin, which is mortal, which is death of God in your soul. So you don't want to do that. And so if you can warn someone and keep them from doing it, that's great. That's wonderful. It's painful because they don't want to hear that, right? I mean, you tell somebody, hey, don't shack up with this person, and you can become, they get pretty offended by that, because you can go to hell. Well, why are you judging me? Why are you this? Why are you that? And it's like, well, I'm just telling you like it is. That's what's in the Bible. That's what we're taught. That's what's in the catechism. That's the truth. That's the gospel truth. But they don't like to hear it, right? And so, what's that? Yeah, it is. Because it's going to put a damper on your relationship with people. It is, because they don't want to hear that. And they're going to say, I'm not talking to that person. They're going to tell me all their crap, and I don't want to hear it, because I like what I'm doing. I prefer my sin. This is what it boils down to. I like my sin over I like what they're saying, which is the gospel truth. I prefer my sin over God. That's ultimately what we do. We make that decision. I prefer this sin and this slavery to this sin, which is attached to it, because when you sin, you become a slave to that sin over God.
But aren't we wrong? Aren't we sinning if we don't say something to him?
Oh, you are responsible to tell him something, yes. Because it says if you correct the sinner, and they don't listen, it's on them. But if you don't correct them,
It's on
then
you.
you're going to have to ask, you're going to have to pay a price for that too. And so that's why, you sit down, you have a discussion. It's like, that ain't right. And they can hate you for it, but you know what? I don't care. I'm getting old enough where it doesn't matter. They ain't going to hate me. I mean, I have 9 brothers and sisters. If one hates me, I still have 8 others, It's like kind of the way you look at it. It's like, I mean, but I have to answer to God for what I do. And we all have to. And I think that's important, that we kind of, as we're viewing the world, this is what we have to do. And it's tough. It's tough. And as you become a parent, a grandparent, with friends and family and nieces and nephews, and, it's difficult to do all the stuff you got to do, but we have to answer to God. In the end, we're trying to get to heaven. We're trying to get you. If you love them, you want them in heaven, because that's ultimately what it's all about. The stuff in the world, that's all going to pass away, and they're going to be pushing up daisies. It may not be next year. It may not be in 20 years. It may be in 50 years. They'll still be pushing up daisies at some point, and they're either going to be in heaven or hell. For 100 trillion years, it'll be day one. So we got to think about that. So we want to help them because we love them, right? If we love somebody, we want them in heaven. That's the truest form of love. There's no other higher motive than to help someone get to heaven, right? Everything else is secondary, but if they don't make it to heaven, I don't care if you're Bill Gates and Warren Buffett and Elon Musk and you got all the money in the world and all the things in the world. If you're in hell, you're the biggest fool failure there ever was. And none of that matters. Not one bit of that matters,
They can't buy their way into heaven.
No. Warren Buffett actually said, I'm going to give everything away. And he said, because alms cover a multitude of sins. And I respect that, because that's what he did, is he quoted the Bible, because alms does cover a multitude of sins.
But isn't he doing it at the last when he dies?
No, he's
doing it
gonna-
Now he's here?
No, he's been pretty,
Oh,
he
okay.
has everything set up where it's going to be. And I mean, the guy also, he lives in this little brick house. I mean, he's worth, half, a third of $1 trillion, I mean, it's whatever. But I mean, I do like him a lot better because it's not ruling him. He's not governed by it. And so that's good. I mean, there's a difference. He's a good steward, and he's planning on, covering a multitude of sins with his almsgiving, which also, by saying that, is he's recognizing a higher power, and that he is a sinner, and that he needs his sins covered, and that almsgiving or giving charity, love, is a way, by doing that, he's cooperating with God's grace and doing it. So that's all good stuff. And so when I hear that from a business person, I'm happy, I'm impressed. I mean, that's good, right? I mean, that's the kind of thing we want to hear. But he's from a different generation. He's 90-some, right? So, he's never let it rule his life. He's lived the same way his whole time. I mean, and actually the guy that was in Monroe, Shoemaker, who started Lazy Boy, I knew him pretty well. I used to work for him, and he was the same way. He'd save his paper towels, and I'd go to his house, and he'd just have this little brick house and a little backyard, and he'd try to beat me down on the price. I'm like, no. I said, I quoted you a price. I said, I didn't do it by the hour. I did it by the job because I'm efficient. And why should I penalize myself and then not be efficient? I said, so it took me a half hour to do this job, and it's worth $40. And you don't want to pay me $40. I said, you want me to screw around for an hour and a half so you feel justified in paying me the $40? He just laughed. He said, you know what, you got exactly right. So, but I mean, but he donated all his money to it was a Lutheran church, so I'm still praying for him. But
Talk him into it, huh, Catholic?
at the time I wasn't, at the time. So that's another important point. At that time, when I was younger, I won the morality award, right? But
Didn't you throw it away?
yeah, Brother Roddenbutcher found it in the hallway. He said, hey, he goes, why'd you throw your morality award on the ground? I was like, it must have slipped out of my bag or something. I don't know. I wasn't too concerned about it. But that's the way God works, is that at the right time, he gave me the graces to really turn to him with my whole heart and soul. I knew I had I was taught in the faith. We prayed the rosary every day. But faith is a gift, and you got to remember, that's what the Catechism teaches, right? Faith is a gift. And so if someone doesn't have that gift yet, you pray for them. You pray that they have it. That's what we're called to do, right? We're the church militant, right? And we're praying for everybody. Because, because God in the mystery of it, and I don't understand exactly how it works, but I do know that the prayers of a righteous man are powerful before God. That's what it says in Scripture, right? And who is the most righteous people? The saints. They're very righteous. They're still alive. God said, I am the God of the living. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I'm not the God of the dead. They're alive. They're saints. They're always going to be alive. The righteous people are the saints. So they're the most righteous. But if we're in the state of grace, God hears our prayers. And when I pray for other Bible study members, I pray for deceased people, and I pray for my family, God hears my prayers. I know he does, and I believe it, and I trust it. And so I'm going to keep praying for them. And that's what we're called to do, right? So we're called to pray for other people. And if you're not, then you're not doing what you're called to do, right? You're called to pray for these people. Because in the fullness of time, God gave me the grace to turn to him completely. And I did. I mean, it was like, and I realized, I didn't really have that. I mean, I had a lot of the elements of the faith, but I didn't have the gift of faith where it was just a complete, I knew everything about the faith, but I wasn't, my heart, I had head knowledge, but I didn't have the heart, where I completely said, yes, you are my Lord, my God. I give my life to you. And that's, but it was through a series of gifts and graces that God poured upon me. Now, had he done it 5 or 6 years earlier, I probably would have discarded it. I mean, it was just the right time where God knew, and that's when I got it. And that's how God works. He knows he loves each and every one of us completely and totally, and he even does things to help us at the right time. Because sometimes people aren't in that place where they can totally accept him. Sometimes it's at the very last moment, a nanosecond before they die. Jesus, mercy, that's it. And so we don't know. We have to just trust in God's mercy, but at the same time, it's, that's a gift. Isn't that beautiful that God will give us all? He loves us that much that he wants us to be with him forever in heaven. And, we just have to say yes, and that's part of it.